Welcome to the Pharmacy Quality Solutions Quality Corner Show, where we talk quality of healthcare and explore what that actually means. Let's dig into performance measurements, the equipped platform, pharmacy goals, and personal goals. We will also occasionally cover topical healthcare news and maybe throw into the conversation a few of our own nerdy passions and hobbies. So turn us up. The Quality Corner Show starts now.
Hello, Quality Corner Show listeners. This is your host, Nick Dorich, and we welcome you to the next episode of the Quality Corner Show. For today's show, we're going to discuss the importance of social media for pharmacy communications. We're going to go past all the memes and the LOLs, and we're going to talk about how your social media can be effective in the grand scheme of things for improving information about your pharmacy and ultimately for improving patient outcomes. Pharmacist and patient communications, they can be done in person, they can be done via a phone call, a text, email, or through any other number of advanced methods. But we need to have a vital relationship with the patient so that they get the information, that they receive reminders about their medications, and that they are optimizing their health. This makes a difference in improving medication adherence and ultimately in educating the patient. But how can social media contribute to this process? Can it effectively reach and impact the patient, or is it better used as a way to connect between other pharmacist professionals? Our guest for today probably has a few things to say about this, and I'm happy to bring on board Richard Weith, president of Vuca Health and host of the RX Radio podcast. Richard, thanks for being on the show, and how are you today?
Hey, Nick, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here.
Excellent. If you happen to follow Richard on Twitter or through any other social media, you're going to already know that his social media presence is quite intense. He does this about as well as anybody that I know. And if you listen to his RX Radio podcast, you're going to know that he's an excellent interviewer. We're going to flip the script on him. He's going to be the interviewee. But Richard, before we get started, can you give us a bit of your background? Where are you coming from in the pharmacy landscape? What do you currently do? And what would you like to share with our audience?
Yeah. So again, thanks for having me. And, being that I'm on the other side of the interview, I hope you're going to take it easy on me, Nick. Okay. So I'm used to doing the interviewing, but, RX Radio and social media are two things that I really enjoy in my spare time. But most of what my day is spent doing is leading Vuca Health. We've actually been able to create one of the largest libraries of medication education videos, and specifically for patients. And what we do is we work with pharmacies, health systems, and health plans and license that content out to them. And as a pharmacist myself, it's really been great to work with some of these providers and be able to be a part of working with them on some of their digital initiatives and patient engagement initiatives. And primarily have a background in community pharmacy. I've had roles with Publix, CVS, Target Pharmacy as well. And, got really passionate about digital media production and mixing that with patient education. Vuca Health was a really good fit for me, where I came into role about 2 years ago. So that's just a little bit of background about myself and the company.
Thanks, Richard. As a follow-up to this, I really view you as a big time pharmacy social media influencer. Is this something that you include on your reference on your resume or CV, or is this something that's in its own way kind of its side hustle for you as well? Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's definitely, I would definitely consider it, a quote unquote side hustle, although, a lot of times things kind of get mixed in together. But, the term influencer, I've always kind of seen and seeing the advent of Instagram influencers and how there's a huge market around being an influencer. I've actually not really ever considered myself one, only because I usually picture influencers as being people that are with the glamorous lifestyles and involved in product placement and lifestyle posts and things like that. But for me, it's more, I love social media to be able to connect with people, build relationships, and I'm really passionate about pharmacy, patient engagement. It's been a great way for me to kind of connect with others that share either similar passions or different passions within the industry, and connect with them on things that they have going on. And learning a lot about, I actually learn so much from social media, which is, a little crazy to think about, but most of me a lot of times people ask, how do I keep up with things? And a lot of my keeping up with occurs on Twitter or LinkedIn. And it's just a great place for not only connecting and building those relationships, but also just keeping a pulse on what's going on out there in the industry.
It's really interesting because pharmacy has always been referenced to me as being a small world, a small profession, and you never know who you're gonna, meet or connect with and who they know. But the advent of social media has made that world seem both bigger and smaller at the same time. We're going to get more into that conversation, but Richard, I'm going to move into our primary questions if for our interview here today, if that's okay with you. So in between all of our online jokes and other content that is typically shared on a social media, you actually pose a lot of important pharmacy questions to the Twitter RX community. So we're going to get into our context here for that question. It's 2020 and social media has been prominent at least since the mid 2000s or so with certain social media platforms and smartphone technology. For pharmacy and the pharmacy industry, and you can take that either as the pharmacy profession or pharmacist practitioners, have we found a way to successfully utilize social media? And if you don't mind expanding on how we have been effective in some of those methods.
Yeah, so I think, we've seen a lot of positive things with how pharmacists and pharmacy as a whole have been utilizing social media, but I think it's been mostly great in our ability to now network and connect with each other within the industry. But I do think there's still a lot of opportunity for how we can utilize social media for patient care. I don't think we're really there yet with realizing how powerful social media is and the tools it actually allows us to not only provide patient care, but also even grow our business. But kind of going back to, how we use it internally within, when I say internally, within the pharmacy industry, kind of networking professional to professional. You mentioned the hashtag TwitterRx, and I think that's actually probably one of the more powerful things that I've seen on social media. And this is exclusively on Twitter, but there's hashtags obviously that you can search on any other platform like LinkedIn or Instagram or even Facebook. But on Twitter, it's been great because it's almost like this button that you click and all of a sudden you're just now in a quote unquote room with just everyone else that's in pharmacy that's tweeting about things that are top of mind for them or news or just keeping up to date with what's going on. And then you also see people interacting with some of those posts. Sometimes it's complete strangers that are pharmacists from across the country, but sometimes it's people that tend to build relationships and you start to get familiar with some of those faces look like. But I feel like that hashtag has been one of the key ways and being able to search hashtags and also search keywords. And one thing that's also really interesting about a platform like Twitter, and again, there's other platforms for this, but I think Twitter is just optimized perfectly for it. Twitter has a search feature that you can actually go to the search bar and type in a couple of keywords that you think would be extremely relevant to a conversation that you might want to jump into. For example, let's say I go to Twitter and I search the words, pharmacist, patient, engagement, those 3 words. I can literally scour all of Twitter for any tweet that mentioned those 3 words in the same tweet. And, you can obviously get as specific as you want with that. And you can find so many specific conversations, or you can go as broad as just saying, technology, and then just seeing what tweets pop up there. But that's a really powerful function. In addition to having something like a hashtag like TwitterRx, that's an extremely powerful function to be able to meet new people, jump into conversations, and just keep up to date and keep an eye on what's going on out in the industry.
This may be an obvious question, Richard. And as I think about social media or just use of technology, the internet in general, does this make a difference for the age group of pharmacists? There's always an inclination, right, that this social media and these other ways of communicating, that this is the quote unquote young man's game. Do you find that really to be the case in the pharmacy circle for social media and online presence? Or is this something where regardless of experience and how long you've been a quote unquote seasoned veteran in the industry, is this something that really everybody can and should participate in?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the data, you can probably clearly see that numbers will show that it definitely has a particular age group that might be more active on any social media platform, really. But I think even though that data might say one thing, I don't think that people should live by that because, I think about just something in my own family, for example. We have a grandmother that does not want internet access. Like she doesn't even want internet access. She doesn't use a computer. So obviously she's not going to be on social media. But I have another grandmother who's 91 who FaceTimes us weekly from her iPad. And those are 2 stark differences of types of people. And I think that if you have to realize that it's super easy to do. And it's just more of the mindset behind it. It's not necessarily about the age group or about, what generation you're from. It's about your mindset. If you have the mindset of, I want to get more involved, I want to connect more with people. How do I do that? If just that alone will get you where you need to be, and I think should encourage you to be on almost every one of these social media platforms, if not picking your favorite like LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram. But it's definitely something that, I don't see a reason for an age gap. I connect with people from, people that are still in undergrad that are interested in pharmacy, all the way up to seasoned veterans that have been in the industry and been in the game for 25 years and, wants to chime in their 2 cents on a particular topic. So, I hope that age gap will be something that continues to be something that we don't really recognize. But I would highly encourage people that maybe, they're not sure what to do or if this is a good idea. I would highly encourage them, if they have the mindset of they want to kind of do more and stay involved, to definitely create an account and start talking to people.
Great. Speaking of being involved with the social media and different ways to be involved with it, we're currently in fall 2020, soon to be winter 2020. And I'm sure that is getting some people already upset that they like and enjoy the nice warm weather. But this year, more than ever, it has different implications for pharmacy. This is going to be items related to, say, health clinics, flu shots, diabetes, weight management, blood pressure checks, et cetera. All these different services that a pharmacy or that a pharmacist can offer. And in a typical year, they'd be having patients come in and get these services, or they may be doing clinics with employers, with schools, et cetera. But we're in a different era, a socially distant era, and there's going to be more changes likely because of what we've learned about COVID-19. Pharmacies can and do use social media as a way to really help share this information. So with that, and if there is a pharmacy that's there and they're trying to figure out how they effectively work with their patient base or with providers in their local area, what do they need to be considering about their online presence? How often they should be communicating? And with that, is it something that they need to focus on patients, other pharmacists, other types of providers? Does it need to be a little bit of everything? I guess, who do they need to target their social media presence to?
Yeah, so they definitely want to take highly into consideration being on social media. But one thing, though, that I would really have them take a look at if they're thinking about their social media presence is the fact that they need to stop trying to sell things on social media, because social media is a whole different ballgame and it's a whole different world of marketing. And a lot of times people have their traditional mindsets of what advertising is and billboards and taking an ad out in a newspaper and things like that. But social media is so on the other end of all of those types of advertising, those types of marketing. So one thing I would do, and to start, is having the right mindset of what to post on social media. And it's going away from being a retailer and going away from being a seller of products or even a seller of services, and think of yourself more as an information provider. Think of yourself more as like the newspaper of your town or the blog of a particular website. And there's stark differences. If you think about a newspaper, the most of what you think about a newspaper is getting information, learning, hearing stories, hearing about what's going on in the recent, high school event that happened, or what's going on in the community college around, or what new pizza shop might be opening. These are the types of things that you need to be posting about on social media, with a small little bit of sprinkle in terms of if you have services available and because you're doing an event and things like that. So it's obviously not going to be where you're never talking about your services. But, I don't think it's valuable for patients to see that, the sunglasses are on sale. That's at the front left of the corner of the store. So, and a lot of times pharmacies are trying to push things like that on social media. And when you think about social media, if a patient or if someone is following your page, they're also following a tons of other accounts. So there's so much stuff that's popping into their feed. You want to make sure you stick out by providing value. And a lot of times people use social media to try to bring value to themselves because they want to say that they have something on sale or that flu shots are back in stock. But in reality, the more value that you provide to the audience, to the patients, is the more brand building and awareness that you have. And it also feeds the algorithm to make sure that your posts pop up more in their feeds. So there's a lot of benefits to providing more value on social media as a business owner and to grow your bottom line, there's much more business opportunity by providing value to patients on social media versus trying to sell the things that you have to offer. Now, what you do is even if I'm breaking this down in like a percentage basis, 95% of what you post should be about bringing value to the patients and bringing value to an audience. And I would say 5% of that should be announcing some form of service or a way, like a call to action to get your patients to know what you have to offer and why you might be different, and be able to provide better care. That would be something that I would really take into consideration from a high level strategy perspective as to why people should be on social media and kind of what things they should be posting to really have an impact on their bottom line.
Richard, it sounds to me like there's two main factors that pharmacists, that really anybody on the team, because this can be something that a pharmacist is doing for a pharmacy. It could be technicians. A lot of pharmacies, particularly independents, may have business partners that handle those aspects. Regardless, whoever's handling that part of the business, I think I gathered two main items from your response. And one is going to be the importance of frequency and getting your audience, getting your community to have an expectation on when and what you're sharing, right? That becomes important. And then the second item, and you talked about having something that we're sharing, you're creating a brand, having something that your audience knows you for. As I think about it, and where I can draw a parallel, I'm sure that in pharmacy school or in your experience as a pharmacist, you learned all about motivational interviewing. And it's how you get that patient, how you're identifying the intrinsic elements that really make them take control of their healthcare. And it sounds like essentially we need to apply that same theory to how we market ourselves on social media, or rather how we promote ourselves on social media, with the idea that it will lead to those increased sales, those increased marketing opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really good contrast to look at motivational interviewing, because the point of marketing and the point of motivational interviewing is to influence behavior. All of the things that we do is really to influence behavior, whether it's to influence them to come to the pharmacy, to get their vaccine, to refill on time, adherence. All of this all comes back to, are we capable of influencing behavior? And there's a lot of similarities between the motivational interviewing part. One thing I think that's interesting, and it's actually real tactical in a similarity, is building a connection with the person. So in motivational interviewing, it's really important for you to kind of break down a barrier and kind of build a connection with them to kind of open up that trust, which is one of the real important steps with being able to change their behavior. By providing value, by connecting with people on social media as your brand, whether you're doing it as your pharmacy or you're doing it as the pharmacist at a particular pharmacy in your neighborhood, it's being able to connect with those people online. And you're going to be able to connect with them with the things that's important to them, whether it's events that are going on, whether it's information about how to better manage their diabetes. This really does go back to the providing value. The more value that you can provide on social media, it's really building that connection with them to start the process of influencing their behavior. And similar to motivational interviewing, a lot of times at the end of it is the call to action. And it's like the summary of like, well, this is what we need you to do. Similar to that, you kind of think of providing so much value as possible. And I hate to just kind of keep saying that, but at the end of the day, the end of, the spectrum of that motivational interviewing, as the analogy here, is that call to action to say, hey, we have a blood pressure screening event going on at the end of the week. We would love to see you there. They're going to hear that and they're going to think about all the value that you've provided to them, whether it's about providing news or information about their blood pressure. And they're going to be like, they've provided so much to me. And because the algorithm is so good, I actually saw this post pop up. And now I'm going to take that call to action and go to that screening or go get my flu vaccine. And so again, Nick, I think that's actually a really good way to put it in terms of kind of comparing it to motivational interviewing and kind of figuring out a way to influence that behavior. Social media is a really good gateway to doing that.
Let's now move, Richard, to our where. There's a lot of where we use social media, or what sites we're using for social media. Not to date myself, but there was a time when Facebook was only a platform for college students. And I believe I was in actually the second class or year of college students that were allowed to use that, because you needed to have a verifiable college email address. And boy, have things changed quite a bit since those early days of Facebook. Whether it's Facebook, other platforms for social media, where does a pharmacy need to be promoting its service? And then, so from a pharmacy business standpoint, but if you're an individual pharmacist, where do you need to be talking about these things? Again, there's a lot of different social media. I'm involved with a lot of different platforms. But then there are things like TikTok, which I know it exists. And I know that it's a hot political topic. We're not going to get into that. But, so there's a lot of different places. Where does pharmacy need to be operating? Where are the hot spots? And then where are some of those areas where, yes, it may be a social media platform, but it doesn't need to really be utilized for these purposes?
I think the two hotspots are definitely going to be Facebook and Instagram. You can find opportunity and you can reach patients on other platforms like Twitter and LinkedIn. But I think the most bang for your buck would probably be Facebook and Instagram. And, you have two different ways of doing that as well. You have organic posts where, you can just open an account, create it and post. And then you have paid advertising where which is one of the most powerful tools in marketing ever created, probably up till now, is being able to pay for reach. And it's crazy because on Facebook, you can say, okay, I only want to create an ad that will target people above 50 in a specific area. And I only want to target people that like a specific Facebook page. So you can get super specific with who you can target, which is extremely different from taking an ad out, let's say like in a newspaper, because it's kind of luck of the draw who picks up that newspaper and sees that. Whereas if you pay for advertising on one of these platforms, you can specifically target exactly who you want to see that information. But I also think organically, and you brought up TikTok. TikTok's actually starting off now with it skews very young to a younger population. But similar to what you brought up with Facebook and how Facebook first started, all platforms evolve. No platform ever stays the way it started. And it always evolves, and the platforms want to maximize the age range essentially that ends up on these platforms. And TikTok, because it skews young, that's actually, you can use that to your advantage. For the most part, generally speaking, most young people have parents. And if you can target to them and create brand awareness about a pharmacy, they know that their parents potentially go to a particular pharmacy or get medications. They oftentimes, I think there's been a lot of talk about how as time has gone on and progressed with social media, that a lot of times the kids are the decision makers in the household because the parents are trying to be young and want to know what's going on and be hip. And they start looking to their kids for advice on decision makings in the household. And I think being able to target some of those kids on, or the younger population on TikTok by just some fun videos in your pharmacy, I think can actually go a long way. There's actually been a lot of success stories. I think mostly like in the dental world, where there's some successful practices that have made very viral TikToks. And now their kids are asking their parents to take them to this pediatric dentist because they saw them on TikTok. And I think that will scale over in the pharmacy world if we can figure out a way to get on there and make videos that are relevant to the platform. So that really just goes to show you, though, that there's a breadth of ways to get involved on social media. But I think one of the more directly targeted ways to do that would be probably on Facebook or Instagram. I think in terms of the age population and your ability to reach people in a certain way, Facebook for me would probably be my go-to if I was operating the marketing for a particular pharmacy.
Thanks, Richard. Now, when I think about use of social media and just in some of those circles that I'm in, and this may be just the list and that I curate and those that I follow on social media, pharmacy does a really good job talking with other folks in pharmacy. And we've talked here about working pharmacy business, how they promote their services, but we need to think as well about how we expand to talking with other healthcare providers. I know you and I both think that pharmacists should have a larger role in the healthcare team. So before we go and close out for today, do you mind sharing some of your advice? What information or tips would you give to health professionals or pharmacists that are trying to step up their social media presence?
I think one thing that's important to do is to not overthink it. I think a lot of times people see social media as this whole new world of being able to communicate. where there's so many similarities to building your brand and building your reputation in person. There's a lot of things that you would do in person and that you shouldn't do in person that are exactly the same mindset that you should have by going on social media. Being nice to people, jumping into conversations, but not being overly aggressive or pushy, not, immediately meeting someone and then asking for, a bunch of favors for something that's only going to benefit you. These are things that you wouldn't do if you just walked up to someone that you met when you were in school or, in a social gathering or in a networking meeting. You would walk up, kindly introduce yourself, find a way to connect. I think that's probably one of the most underrated things in pharmacy and in general, even in in-person networking, is when you first meet someone, try to find some common ground to connect on something that's outside of pharmacy. That is something I think that would probably be one of the better things I would try to do on social media. And the cool thing about it is you can do as much or as little as you want to. So, you can take an hour on Monday evenings and seeing if you can connect with someone, or you can take 3 hours a day and, see where that network kind of takes you. But I think at the end of it, it's really just not overthinking it, being yourself, letting your personality show, and realizing that you're in real control of what you're able to do on social media, how big you're able to build your network, or how small you want to keep your network. But I would definitely encourage people to just, again, not overthink it, be themselves, and try to mimic as much as possible your interactions online with how it would be in person.
Yeah, Richard, this is, to me, a really fascinating topic, because how some people use social media, it's very interesting. Some use it just as a way to post their thoughts, and it's almost like maybe it's like a shorter version of a blog that would have existed maybe 10 or 15 years ago as a primary medium, whereas others really do use it as a way to grow their professional network, expand their horizons, whether it be, job network, learning, new skills, new connections, opportunities for a business. It can really be whatever you want it to be. And how you plan yourself for success. In a way, it becomes this item where it's your own way to view the experience, and you can collect it however you want it to be. Some people, they want to collect or catch them all here. And it's a way you can engage with people in many different facets. I know even as I've looked and seen in social media, you're a professional doing the work that you do that are pharmacy specific. I'm also really intrigued. You'd mentioned talking about personality, having a personality. I know that I've seen from you that in recent weeks or months, you've gone down a rabbit hole of collecting Pokemon cards, and that social media has been a big avenue for that. Now, that may not be related to pharmacy at all, but I'm sure that network helps to build and drive that content and pick up a new hobby as well. Is that a correct assumption on my part?
Yeah, so I saw that you made the Pokemon reference. I got to catch them all early, and I was going to definitely mention that. I've been hot on investing in Pokemon cards recently because it's less of a hobby and more of like an investment with it, because I think there's some opportunity there, and I've been investing in sports cards for a couple of years now, and that market exploded, and I feel like the same might happen with Pokemon. So, and it's fun though. I will say it's like 2 to 5% hobby because it's fun, because I did play with them as a kid. But it's one of those things where it's much more fun to invest in versus trying to do some research on a blue chip stock. I'd much rather do some research on some vintage Japanese Charizard gem mint cards. So.
Yeah, it's great. I also find that's an important part, and I am going to tie this into the pharmacy aspect of it as well. Don't you worry about that, because from the standpoint of it, right? While we may be a pharmacist, you and I, Richard, we are pharmacists, and that may be our day job. And we may no longer be doing direct patient care as part of our job. There are other pharmacists that do that out there, but each pharmacist is a person. They've got their own interests, their own hobbies outside of just pharmacy, right? It's not, while a lot of us kind of joke that we live and breathe pharmacy 24/7, I don't think there's anybody that actually does that. So having that showing some of that personality to some extent, again, going too far can be a bad thing, but you'd never know what other audience you're able to bring in. So from that Pokemon experience that are there, I'm sure that there's others you're connecting with that are not familiar with pharmacy and are not familiar with the benefit that they can receive from their local pharmacy. So it's a way to create natural conversations that otherwise would not have happened. So, from a professional standpoint, it's okay to mix in some of that fun, personal element with the professional standpoint. It's good to have a little bit of that balance. Richard, I do want to move to our close for today, and I thank you for being on the Quality Corner show. It's always great to have fellow podcasters on the show to discuss pharmacy topics, and this was definitely an entertaining one for me. Before we do close out, I'd like to have you go over how they can get in touch with you. So that may be social media, that may be through other avenues, but if someone wants to hear more from you, how can they contact you?
Yeah, social media is definitely the best way to do that. I'm on all social media platforms, even TikTok. If you just search my name, you'd be able to find me and connect there. Twitter, I'm heavily spend most of my time on in terms of the social media landscape, but whether it's Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook, if you just search my name, you'd definitely be able to connect, and I'd be happy to connect with anyone on any of those platforms. So Nick, thank you so much for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
Well, Richard, a pleasure to have you on. And for those that haven't been familiar, you can check Richard's podcast out, RX Radio. I know that is one that I usually check out. Really like the most recent episode that you had as well. So be sure to give him a follow as well. But we're going to go ahead and close for today. And as more and more patients go online looking for medication, instruction, and education information, it's important that pharmacists are in the space where patients are. And we thought this episode was really important for us to discuss how pharmacy can communicate with patients in a way that is natural and that is expected as we live in a changing and digital world in 2020. So we really appreciate, Richard, you joining us for today's episode to talk about social media and how a pharmacy can effectively use that. If you're not actively engaged with PQS on social media, I'd recommend you check us out. You can find us on Twitter at Pharmacy Quality. And then also we are on LinkedIn and YouTube. But we're going to go ahead and finish up our episode for today. And of course, we do have one final message from the PQS team. Our team here at PQS has a couple of favors to ask of you, our podcast listener. First, we encourage you to share this podcast with 2 friends, because if you share this with 2 friends and each of them shares it with 2 friends, it really helps us hit a larger listening audience. Second, we also want to take a moment to remind you to subscribe to the podcast wherever you may find it. And then, if you have any questions or topics you would like us to address, please contact us. The best way to do so is to email info@pharmacyquality.com. Let us know what is on your mind and what we can address so that you are fully informed. Our goal is to continuously improve our podcast content and to provide meaningful information to our listeners based on current topics in healthcare, technology, and quality measurement. We want to help you become as effective as possible in how you care for patients and improve public health outcomes. So until next time, we wish you well.